When you go through a trauma, you don't come out the same. Trump came out of that assassination attempt a different person, maybe a better person, maybe a little more thoughtful. You saw it in his address, you saw it at the convention. I think that's a positive thing, but he's definitely not the same person he was before he got shot.
You've spent a lot of time in politics. For you to watch that and process what happened in the aftermath, the Secret Service grilling.
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today.
What did you make of it?
The Secret Service let it happen. Nobody on the roof, nobody in the area, nobody confronting this guy, nobody detaining him, nobody shooting him when they had the chance, nobody telling Trump, sorry, you can't go on stage right now, there's something going on. It was a passive participation. There were just too many failures.
My fellow Americans.
Biden bowing out, Kamala now hitting the pavement with this brand new narrative. Is there an advantage to her coming out this late? And do you think any of this was ever planned or not?
It worked exactly as planned. Biden was the puppet, and the less we see of Kamala, the better it is for her.
Right.
She's weak and not likable. The more it's an image, and Trump's a dictator, Trump's a Nazi, whatever, that plus killing babies is really all they have. I would stick to my forecast that Trump's going to win, but Trump's doing well with every group except white women. They can swing elections. They were not favoring Biden. Biden was just too weak, too far gone. But now that they have Kamala, she fits the bill. That vote could go her way, and that's a big deal. The biggest mistake Republicans could make would be to think this is over. It's not over.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Jim Rickards, the American lawyer and investment banker turned economist, thought leader, and author. You have over 35 years of experience working in capital markets on Wall Street while also acting as an advisor to the CIA and the Pentagon. You are a New York Times bestselling author, and your upcoming book, Money GPT, AI and the Threat to the Global Economy, looks at the danger AI poses to national security and the global financial order. You are also known as the man who predicted the biggest financial crash in American history, and right now, you believe that a second crisis in the banking system could happen at any moment. With President Biden dropping out of the race and Kamala Harris the new nominee, you are predicting, quote, at least another month of political chaos. You do believe that Donald Trump will ultimately win the election on November 5th, but that the Democrats will block him from office by declaring him an insurrectionist. Jim, welcome back to London Real.
Thank you, Brian. Great to be with you. That was good. Thanks for the intro, but also a very good list of what's going on. It's almost, my job is basically taking in current events and political events and all that, processing it, doing analysis for people. But the input side of the equation is getting pretty dense.
You know, as I was saying, we are now clearly living in a simulation because you can't make up some of this stuff. I mean, literally, a bullet caught on high-speed camera going toward Trump's heads, the debates, the convention, Biden bowing out, Kamala now hitting the pavement with this brand new narrative. I mean, where do we begin, Jim? Where do we begin?
Well, you're right. I think it was Lennon. I'm going to paraphrase. He said there are years when almost nothing happens, and there are weeks when 10 years of stuff happens. We've just been through 4 weeks with about 10 years of, kind of headline events. People know the rundown starting on June 27th with the Biden debate faceplant. He really did look like a corpse. I mean, I don't know who did the white makeup, but not a good job. Then we had the Trump attempted assassination. Sadly, Corey Compatore was killed, and two others were severely wounded. So we think about them and their families, and of course the Trump family. Then within days, the Republican National Convention, the selection of J.D. Vance. That's a selection I applaud. I can give reasons for that in terms of economic policy. I think it's a very big deal, but there's certainly, your what they call the country club Republicans are all upset because J.D. Vance is not your typical Lindsey Graham warmonger, kill more Ukrainian type of Republicans. He's a lot more sensible than that. And then quickly pivot to a coup d'etat. I think in terms of Biden leaving, this was not, we'll sit around with the family, talk it over, I guess I'll withdraw. No, this was a coup d'etat. It was bloodless, at least so far, if you don't count Trump. But I can't think of a better way to describe it, having worked at the CIA for 10 years and pretty immersed in the history of the whole thing. I know how these things happen, and I think we just saw it in America. And then Biden finally drops out with a gun to his head. No one knows who signed the letter. It looks like an auto pen. It was not on White House stationery. He clearly couldn't write it. And I would say he didn't write it not because of grammar or syntax or anything like that, but just because he can't write. So somebody wrote it. Somebody used an auto pen. Somebody pushed it out on Twitter. How much he knew about his own decision to withdraw, not clear. Maybe not very much. And then here comes Kamala. I love the way. And I don't mean to do like a political op-ed, Brian, but I mean, these are all facts. The Democrats are always, Trump's a threat to democracy. We're the party of democracy. We have to defend democracy. Excuse me. You had a 6-month primary process, which was Democratic, 15 million votes, and you just tore them up, threw them in the trash, got in the back room, said Kamala's the one, rounded up whipped the delegates. Yeah, okay, we agree. And they've gone so far. They're doing a virtual online nominating process that's going to start August 1st, so next week. Coming up soon. And so the conventions are kind of for show anyway. The last time there was a contested convention where the delegates went and they fought it out and picked a winner. It was 1952. That was Robert Taft and Dwight Eisenhower. So they've been kind of like pre-planned, but at least they vote. At least they vote. Somebody counts the votes. Here, the nomination will be done before the convention. So I see no purpose in the convention. I'd say it could be a good party, but there are going to be 100,000 pro-Hamas, pro-terror protesters in the streets of Chicago with a mayor who is not Richard Daley. You're not going to see any police enforcement. So I don't even know we'll see how that plays out. But so the whole thing, when you said you can't make it up, and I would say if you were dealing with real people in normal circumstances and you had to come up with a scenario, you can't make it up. But in a world of AI, who knows what we're seeing? That's really the point. So there's an awful lot on the table, but we have to go from there. We can't just kind of like it's not a movie after all. So it looks like Trump and Kamala, although Kamala, I never was Kamala or Kamala. She doesn't know either, so how should I? But the Democrats are so ruthless. I mean, what if, and I'm not necessarily forecasting this, but what if a few weeks from now, or September 1st or whatever, she's faring very badly in the polls. I mean, remember, she ran in 2020, never made it to the first primary. She withdrew before the first primary, never got a single vote, and her money dried up, and everyone's like, forget her, let's pivot. They had a list, Klobuchar and Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders, till they all got run off the road, and they picked Biden, who stayed in the basement. But what if she's doing poorly and they do this again? Why, if you have one coup d'etat, why not two? Why not pull her out? And because the Democratic National Committee can just change the rules and they can pick somebody else. So you can't rule that out. But let's just say it's Trump and Kamala Harris. I would stick to my forecast that Trump's going to win, but it's not. It's a little tighter than with Biden. Biden was almost clear cut. You could get a pretty good forecast of the electoral vote. People around the world, I travel overseas a lot. They always say, Jim, I don't understand American politics. And I say, well, that's okay. Americans don't understand it either. But you'll be hearing a lot. You are hearing a lot about Trump and Kamala in a virtual tie, 47 Trump, 46 Kamala, that's within the margin of error. So, call it a virtual tie if you want, et cetera. Among registered voters, okay, not sure. You got to read the crosstabs and the fine print in terms of sampling and all that stuff. But so what? That's not how we elect presidents in the United States. We do not have a nationwide popular vote. What we have is state by state. Yeah, there's a popular vote at the state level, but it's winner take all with only two exceptions. They don't matter very much, Maine and Nebraska, but it's winner take all in terms of the electoral votes. And then you add up the electoral votes, you got to get to 270. So your path to victory is state by state. There are a bunch of states that are just going to go to Trump. No one disputes it. There are a bunch of states that are just going to go to Kamala. If she's the nominee, looks likely. No one disputes that. And then you get down to, depending on how you count, 7 or 10 battleground states. And Trump was leading in every one of them and actually widened the battlefield. So there were certain states that were not on the list that got on the list because they were considered definitely Democrat. And they're like, oh, no, actually, no, it's close. Trump could win. Those were Virginia, New Mexico, and Minnesota. And maybe New Hampshire. New Hampshire's on some of the lists. That's where I'm coming from. In addition to the 7 that were definitely battleground states, and Trump is doing very well in all of them. Now, we don't have good, reliable polling at this point post Kamala. So let's get her coronated. She's going by the I think with the TikTok group, they call her Queen Brat. So if I use that expression, you know where that comes from. But she's the Queen Brat. But we haven't. She's not officially nominated yet, so we haven't had really good, reliable polling. We'll see. But I would expect those trends to continue. And here's why, Brian. It's not just political preference or anything else. She's a really lousy candidate. It's not. Policies matter, of course, but it's not all about policy. I got a few pats on the back in 2016. I was one of really a handful of people, 5 or 6, who predicted that Trump would win, before the election, not like claiming credit after the fact. It was on live TV with Francine Lockwood Bloomberg before the election. I told her Trump would win. Her jaw, nearly dropped to the floor. But there were reasons for that. And one of them was I said that Hillary Clinton was just an awful candidate. People didn't like her. Again, you could like her policies, but she and people have a third choice apart from the candidates, and leaving aside, RFK Jr. and Jill Stein. We do have a couple of third party candidates who might make a decent showing. But that aside, you can just stay home. That's another way to exercise your right to vote, and that's what happened in some of these key states. So Kamala Harris she's not cognitively impaired the way Biden is. She's not. No one says she has dementia or anything of the kind. She's just not very bright. I mean, she's kind of a dunce, to be honest. And I won't, pardon me, go into detail in terms of how she made her way to the top. This is a family program, after all. But she's the perfect example of DEI. Just continually. And she has this appeal to the African American community. She's not African American. Her mother was Sri Lankan, beautiful country. Her father was Jamaican. And she grew up in Canada and then moved to the United States. She's a citizen. She qualifies. I don't dispute that. But the notion that she's the African American candidate, I mean, that's an invention. But she's just not that smart. And the people use the phrase word salad. Like, give her. I used to say, who's a writer, because you couldn't, her syntax and logic are so convoluted. You listen to her for 3 or 4 minutes or longer, and you just stop and you say, what did she just say? Like, what was that? And it's not garbled and slurred like Biden. It's just, wow, it's the way some adults talk to third graders, and I don't talk to third graders. I have grandchildren, I don't talk to third graders in some kind of baby talk. I talk to them, like adults, and that's how you bring up their, vocabulary and thought processing and all that. You don't talk to children like children. You try to bring up their game. But she talks to adults as if she were talking down to a third grader. That's the best way to describe it. And you just shake your head. So that, again, I look back at her 2020 performance. I look at her public speaking as vice president, her failure as the border czar. I love, there's a lot of Orwellian history erasing going on right now, sending things down the memory hole. I love, there's a reporter for Politico who said, Kamala Harris was never the border czar. I don't know where Republicans get that talking point. And somebody did the research and they found that the same reporter who said she was never the border czar 3 years ago reported Kamala Harris is the new border czar. Of course she was the border czar. There's no official title. It's not in the plum book. It was like, that's what everyone called her. The press, the media, liberal and conservative. She was the border czar. She never visited the border. I think she made it to Texas once, but not actually to the border. She talked about root causes. She was like a goodwill ambassador to Guatemala, but that was about it. And then did nothing, washed her hands of it, knew it was a losing proposition. And the border's been open. We've had estimates vary, but pardon me, perhaps as many as 7 or 8 million illegal aliens have crossed the border over the course of the Biden administration. So that's a major failure. And then they just stopped giving her stuff because she bungled all of it. So between her very kind of at best medium, maybe low IQ, inability to kind of string words together, failure in terms of policy, the cackling. But the cackling, if you know anything about behavior, it's a tick. It's a response to the fact that she really can't talk. She can't articulate, so it just cackles. Some people clam up, some people run and hide, but that's her defense mechanism. But it's not going to go over well with the American people.
Now, Jim, some people are saying it's a genius move because now the honeymoon period might get her to the election, and she didn't have to go through the rigorous year-long process. And also, you might just fall out of love with someone. They say what a familiarity breeds contempt. But then on the other hand, Trump made some major inroads into, say, Silicon Valley as they kept Biden as this blatant example of incompetence. And, Trump really turned the David Sachs and all of his colleagues and all these other people who finally come out and said, wow, I spent some time with the guy and I really like him. And so, I can't tell who's winning the chess game, or if there is even a chess game, or if it's throwing darts at a board. Like, timing wise, is there an advantage to her coming out this late? And do you think any of this was ever planned or not?
Yes and yes. There's a definite advantage to her coming out late. Just as in 2020, Biden ran the basement strategy. He had a couple of rallies. They were like at night in driving movie theaters. Pardon me, during COVID, that's a whole other story. But they invited people to come in their cars and park in the driveway and flash their lights. And there were like 15 cars. Meanwhile, Trump was outdoors, 25 indoors or outdoors, 25,000 people all over the country. But Biden basically stayed in the basement. The less we see of Kamala, the better it is for her.
Right.
She's weak and not likable. And I would say this: Hillary's not dumb. Hillary has a pretty high IQ, but she's not likable for a lot of other reasons. But Kamala is kind of mentally weak and not likable. So the less you see of her, the better. The more it's an image, and Trump's a dictator, Trump's a Nazi, whatever. That plus killing babies is really all they have. So that's the Democratic platform. But so coming out late is a definite advantage. If she had to go. Well, the Democrats, there were a couple contenders during the early primary season, including RFK Jr., and they ran him out of the party. Who's more of a Democratic family going back at least to the 1920s, maybe earlier, than the Kennedys? Nobody. They had a presidential candidate, 2 senators, the attorney general, members of Congress, et cetera, through generations. They ran him out of the party. He's now still running as an independent. They said he actually would have put on a good campaign in New Hampshire, and they changed the rules. They said, well, we're moving New Hampshire back behind South Carolina in terms of the primary. New Hampshire said, go jump off a cliff. We're first because it's actually a state law. And they say, well, okay, anyone who runs in New Hampshire, your delegates don't count. And by the way, we're going to disqualify your other delegates because you broke the rules. So that's when Kennedy just gave up and declared independent. So kind of to do the alternate history scenario of what if somebody else had run, doesn't work. But that was totally orchestrated. And I love the hypocrisy in the media over the past month, well, particularly after the June 27th debate. Yeah, it's been about a month. Oh, we're shocked that Biden can't speak and is cognitively impaired and slurs his words, and we finally beat Medicare, whatever that means. But I knew it 4 years ago. I'm not a doctor. It was obvious 4 years ago. It was obvious to everyone 4 years ago. What we've seen is a large 4 year, well, 3.5 year stretch of cognitive dissonance, denial, lies, cover-ups, pick your term, maybe, well, all of the above. And if you said something about it, it's like, you were, I don't know what you were a bad person. So everyone knew it. Everyone in Washington knew it. Everyone in the White House knew it. And they just put up a wall of lies. The most dangerous part of lies and propaganda, which are very powerful, but the most dangerous part is when you start to believe it yourself. You're trying to get the world to believe it, and there are ways of doing that, but they start to believe it themselves. And then, so just the op-eds and the interviews last month, oh, we were shocked. Why didn't you tell us? Silicon Valley, we never would have written all those checks if only we had known. Everybody knew. But what they did, and this is going back to your point, Brian, about how planned was this, just string Biden along as far as you possibly can, and then push him out. And I did say, by the way, I wrote an article in my newsletter, Strategic Intelligence, in the date on the edition was October 2023, but we actually write it in September. It's like any publication, you do it all in advance. So I wrote this in September 2023, which is over 10 months ago. And I said the Democrats are going to kick out Biden and bring in somebody from the bench. We didn't know who. Gavin Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, obviously Kamala would have been one of them. But I said in writing 10 months ago, and I knew he was mentally impaired 4 years ago. So all this fake shock about what actually happened. But the explanation for it is that it worked exactly as planned. That Biden was the puppet through the. Now you knew that it couldn't be before the primaries were over. The coup d'etat could not be before the last primary, because that would have been messy, because all of a sudden you would have people jumping into the primaries, and they didn't want that. That's called democracy, and that's the last thing the Democrats want. But it had to be before the convention, because if you have an open convention, then, jump ball. I mean, maybe they like Nikki Haley, who knows? But that's one where, the Illinois delegation could have said, Jay Pritzker's our guy, and then you get into a real fight. So they didn't want an open primary. They didn't want an open convention. So what I said is the window is kind of from mid-June to mid-August. Well, end of July, there we are. But when you see things like that validate the thesis, it gives credence to the thesis, which is that this whole thing was orchestrated. Now we have, Biden's gone. Now we have Kamala. She didn't have to get a single vote. She didn't have to contest in the primaries. She will not have to contest at the convention. It's just an anointing. That's why we call her Queen Brat. And we go from there. But now the acid test is, okay, you've made it this far, 100 days to go, approximately. But what about a debate? I mean, they don't have to debate. There's no rule that says you have to. That's up to the candidates. I have a hard time thinking they won't debate, but the idea of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on the same stage, I was looking forward to J.D. Vance and Kamala, because that would be in the vice presidential debate. That would be fun. This one, I don't know. They might have to get the mercy rule, or it's like Howard Cosell when Joe Frazier got knocked out. Frazier goes down, but I don't know how they're going to get through that, because there is no teleprompter. They can give you softball questions, and remember Obama in the CNN debate, I think against Mitt Romney, Kennedy Crowley was the moderator, and Obama just goes, "Hey, help me out here, Kennedy." He got stuck on something. He turns to the moderator for like a prompt on a live debate, but there's a limit to that. So I would expect that will. Maybe they won't do it. I mean, that's the answer. Really, just don't do it. Just kind of keep going. So having said all that, Brian, it's the biggest mistake Republicans could make would be to think this is over. It's not over. It's going to come down to the wire. We haven't even talked about, kind of rigging the election. The problem with the thing with Biden is it was getting to the point where it was too big to rig, meaning you could rig it to some extent with, pre-printed ballots and just run them through the scanners at 3 a.m. and all the kind of stuff they did in Georgia and Philadelphia and Phoenix, basically Maricopa County, Arizona. But if you're within 50,000 votes and you can truck in 100,000, that works. But Trump's margins were so big that it was probably beyond, too big to rig was the expression. That may not be true in the case of Kamala. And the biggest variable are white women. and college-educated white women. I don't know what they taught them in college or what their priorities are, but Trump's ahead with men. Not ahead, but very much trending his way with African American men, African Americans in general, Hispanics. Turns out Hispanics don't like illegal immigration. A lot of them came here legally. I'm all for. I love, I was a Latin American studies major. I mean, I love the Hispanic culture, and I'm pro-immigration provided it's legal. But these are people who did it legally. I was down at the federal courthouse in Brooklyn. I was on another case, but it was a nice day and it was early and I was waiting outside. And this woman came out of the courthouse and she was clutching the American flag. It was folded in the triangle. That's the right way to fold the flag. And she came up to me and handed me her cell. She said, "Would you take a picture of me, please?" I said, "Of course." So I stepped back, frame it, take a picture, hand it back to her. And she was in tears. She said, "I've just been sworn in as a U.S. citizen, and I wanted to take a picture of the event." And I was almost in tears. I mean, imagine what you got to apply, get a green card. There's a waiting period. There are legal fees. Take a test. I mean, it's not like walking in or getting a driver's license. That's the way to do it, and she'll make a great American citizen. But what we have is, but that's the Hispanic community in the U.S. They don't like all the immigrants, and by the way, they're not mostly Hispanic. I mean, they're Afghanis, Africans, Congolese, but obviously a lot of Hispanics, but Chinese, etc. So those votes are trending Trump's way. So he's got men gaining in minorities, Hispanics. The younger people actually are going for Trump. If you're 21 or if you're 19, let's say, the voting age is 18. So let's say you're 19 or 20. Well, you were, probably playing video games during the last election. You don't necessarily have strong impressions of what happened in 2020. A lot of the Trump propaganda just kind of came and went. Maybe you're still playing video games, or maybe you're an engineer. Who knows? But the point is, the young people are much more open-minded than a lot of the ideologues think, and they're trending to Trump. So Trump's doing well with every group except white women, and I don't know what it is. But the problem is that upper middle class white women are concentrated in certain places like Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, Montgomery County, Maryland, Loudoun County, Virginia, and around some of the major cities, and in places like Maricopa County, Arizona, and they can swing elections. They were not favoring Biden. Biden was just too weak, too far gone. Maybe they would go to Trump if they're undecided. Maybe they would stay home. But now that they have Kamala, she fits the bill. She has the right image. That vote could go her way, and that's a big deal. So it also affects the congressional seats. So I wouldn't take anything for granted, and I don't think Trump is, by the way. I think his campaign is doing a great job. Money, it's going to be even. You're right. Trump's getting more and more from Silicon Valley. Elon Musk. I like Elon Musk said, "I'm going to give Trump $45 million a month." It was like an allowance. I mean, usually these guys, I know a certain number of these billionaires, they'll write a $20 million check, or some of them, Adelson and some others, write a $100 million check. But then that's it. That's their commitment. But Elon's like 45 a month, for the next 3 months. Typical Elon. But that's big money, and that's coming in. But Kamala will get her money from the Soros organization, Act Blue, small donations. So I don't think one side or the other has an edge on money. They've got advertising talent. It does come down. I mean, you need all that. I'm not saying you can prevail without that. You need it, but they have it. So what's the differentiate? What's the control variable? What's the differentiating variable? It's the candidate themselves, and Trump's proven. I do see, and you have to have been through something like this to understand it, but when you go through a trauma, and an assassination attempt, getting your ear blown off would qualify, but traumatic brain injury, really messy divorce, some kind of reversal of fortune, financial setback, big one, and other kinds of things. You don't have to go down the list. You don't come out the same. You survive. Well, you can survive. Not everyone does, but you can survive. But post-traumatic stress syndrome is a real thing. Sometimes it hits you within days. Sometimes it hits you years later. It's like a little time bomb. But Trump came out of that assassination attempt a different person, maybe a better person. There's a positive side to this. You saw it in his address. You saw it at the convention. A little, maybe a little more thoughtful. These are not things you associate with Trump. You think of him as very impulsive, very, and he is. But he's also very creative at the same time. But there's a little more kind of sober. I mean, he doesn't drink, but just behaviorally sober, restrained Trump. That's probably a good thing. A little more mature, maybe. Which again, 78, you don't change very much. But I think that's a positive thing. But he's definitely not the same person he was before he got shot.
Talk to me about on the day, and I agree with you. He was a different guy walking into the convention. The speech at the convention, he definitely seemed more emotional. He said, "I'm going to tell you what happened that day, and I'm never going to talk about it again." He kissed the helmet of Corey. But of course, now a week later, he's back out on the trail, and he seems much more back to normal. He's telling that story again. But I agree, we still don't know how that might affect him. What about on the day, Jim? I mean, you've spent a lot of time, in politics, in the world. For you to watch that and process what happened in the aftermath, even the Secret Service grilling and the subsequent resignation, what did you make of that day, or even that 3 minutes that happened there? I mean, I caught the end of it right before I went to bed in London, like 11 o'clock on a Saturday, and it was just stranger than fiction to watch. What did you make of it?
Yeah, my wife and I were in we have a little TV room here, and we were watching a baseball game. But my wife thought that Trump was going to announce the VP pick at the rally. That was not his plan, but she was very interested in that. So she comes out, opens the laptop, and she was watching live TV. So I heard it. She was watching it, and there's something, all this stuff about fire. If you're my guns, gunfire is distinct. You know it. And I heard the pop, 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 and I said, "That's a gun." My wife goes, "Oh my God, he's been shot." And I jumped up, and then we kind of took it from there. I was genuinely shocked. Just, I mean, really, like, kind of, kicks you in the gut. And my wife and I talk politics, right? I can hang out with me and not be subjected to that. But she said for a long time, because I'm also a lawyer, and I'm like, they tried to bankrupt him. They had 2 bogus impeachments, every accusation in the book, 2 federal cases, 2 state law cases. What else? I mean, what else can you possibly do to the guy? Bankrupt him, embarrass him, put him in jail, call him an insurrectionist. There was almost, and none of it worked. I mean, it's, this cases were on appeal, but Trump's still standing. It's like that Elton John song, "I'm still standing." And my wife would say they're going to have to shoot him. But she said that to me for months. And I said, no, I mean, they won't go that far. I should have known better. I do listen to her, but I always say, no, they won't go that far. Well, they did. Now, my view of what the Secret Service did, and I know a little bit about it, and I've fired AR-15s. I've used the 5.56 NATO round, which is a lot more powerful than the 223. With an iron sight, which this guy had. He did not have a telescopic sight. 150 yards. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's very doable. You don't have to be a Marine sharpshooter to make that shot. Low recoil, big, high capacity magazine. It was all completely doable. So then you go down the list. Well, what was the Secret Service doing? Why was there no one on the roof? Why, the guy had a rangefinder. Well, what do you use rangefinders for? Well, golf and hunting. Well, this guy was hunting. He was hunting humans. He flew a drone. What do you use drones for? Well, surveillance, measuring distances. And everyone's like, "Oh, look at that guy. He's got a rangefinder." And the people are calling the police. I mean, the police were there, and and this was being reported in. So we know this is not a conspiracy theory. We know that the Secret Service knew almost an hour before the shooting that there was a suspicious character, so-called person of interest, walking around the vicinity with rangefinders, and then had earlier flown a drone. The sharpshooters had the shooter in their sights. what were they waiting for? I mean, guys 100 yards, 150 yards away with a rifle aiming at the president, and you don't take him out. What are they waiting for? Some lawyer to, make a decision in Washington? I don't know. But the point is, my view of the Secret Service, I don't have enough information to say that they were actively involved in the assassination attempt. I have my suspicions. I can't say that. What I can say is they let it happen, that it was a passive participation. So they were, nobody's that, Occam's razor says, if there's a simple explanation, a complicated explanation, go with the simple one. Pretty good advice most of the time, but not always. And in this case, there were just too many failures. One failure, two, okay, but nobody on the roof, nobody in the area, nobody confronting this guy, nobody detaining him, nobody shooting him when they had the chance, nobody telling Trump, sorry, you can't go on stage right now, there's something going on. By the way, it was not the regular Secret Service detail, it was the B team. What they did is they had surged their top people, including some of Trump's people, to a Jill Biden rally in Pennsylvania, not far away. Well, I mean, big state, could have been a couple hundred miles, but they sent them to the Jill Biden rally. And they took people who weren't even Secret Service. They were DHS, which controls the Secret Service. They kind of seconded them, or like made them deputized them as Secret Service agents for the day and put them on the detail. Now, there's one woman, Secret Service agent, who was, part of the group that got Trump off the stage. Hey, that group, yeah, they jumped on the president. They put their bodies between the shooter and the president. I give full credit to that. That was heroic. But when they stood him up, she's about 5'7". Trump's 6'3". How do you create a human shield of a 6'3" individual with a 5'7" agent? You need 6'4" agents. I mean, and they're around. So things like that are just inexplicable. And there's so many of them that if you say each one is like a 1 in 100 chance or 1 in 1,000 chance, but when you multiply it all, you get to 1 in a million pretty quickly, meaning it's not random. So, so what do we conclude from that? Again, I would need more evidence to say that the Secret Service tried to assassinate him, but I feel very comfortable saying the Secret Service let it happen. These people are out there. That's why you have a Secret Service in the first place. Their job is to anticipate it. I mean, I once looked into, back, not recently, but a few years ago when the ISIS people were chopping people's heads off in London and so forth. I had a kind of high profile speaking event in Vienna, and I had a bodyguard in London because you can't have guns in London, but I had an armed bodyguard for an event at LSE, but I was doing something else in Vienna. So I called my security firm and I said, could we get a security perimeter or whatever? And they came back to me and with what they said, well, if we do it, here's what we're going to do, because we're the real deal. And I ended up not doing it because it would have been like, I don't know, $50,000 or something for a 1-hour speech. But they said, we look at everybody who's in the city. We look at who's coming and going. We do background checks. We scout the area. We search it, metal detectors, and I was like, hey, great. Nice to know you're out there. Great job. I decided not to do it. It turned out the event went fine. But that's what professionals do. And the Secret Service are supposed to be professionals, and they did not do that. So I'm glad the director resigned. She should have resigned, the night of the assassination attempt. But they're not off the hook. We're going to be hearing a lot more about it.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. One last thing. If the Secret Service let it happen, and that's the best I can say about them, I believe they did, who was running the shooter? Because this is where the Secret Service and the CIA the CIA doesn't have to tell the Secret Service, hey, we're running a shooter. All they have to say is keep up the sloppy work, or don't say anything. Just knowing the Secret Service was doing what they're doing, somebody else can then run a shooter. And there's so much we don't know about that. You hear about a second shooter on the water tower. Where did the bullets actually come from that killed and wounded the individuals in the crowd? Were they from crooks, or were they from another angle? Tons of logistics, tons of forensics. and we don't know the answer to any of it. And the FBI, as usual, is lying to us. So the Secret Service is clammed up, and the FBI won't say. And when they do say something, they lie. So we don't know. It may take a long time.
Yeah, a bunch of questions there. If I'm having flashbacks to the JFK assassination, I think it was a combination of super lax security and a lot of things just didn't happen that day, and people didn't show up to protect, in addition with kind of that intentional shooter that kind of got that result.
Right.
A couple things I want to ask you before you go. First of all, Bill Ackman of Pershing Square runs a huge hedge fund, tweeted out like a couple days ago, if I were China, I would invade Taiwan now. And I guess he's addressing this issue that now that Biden is effectively passed the torch, we got a lame duck president for 6 months. And if you're any major power, why not do something now? Because who the hell is going to make a decision? It's so not clear who would right now. And that's a fear that I definitely woke up with the other day. So I want to get your thoughts on that. And then, you mentioned rigging elections. I'm curious, with all eyes on that, how could it be done and how can't it be done maybe this time? So those are kind of my two.
Yeah, well, Bill Ackman showed that he knows nothing about military operations or China. So, okay, Bill. By the way, I did an interview the other day, and I said, the hedge fund billionaires, okay, they're doing something right. The hedge fund, nice job, you're a billionaire, congratulations. There are a bunch of them. I include them in my list of factors when I'm doing predictive analytics and predicting elections or whatever as a contrary indicator. Like if Ray Dalio, Bill Ackman, Ken Griffin, Don Sussman, all these guys have a view, they're almost always wrong. It's incredible how wrong they are. Because they got so much money, like, oh, I'm a smart guy, and everything. They just don't know. These are the people who supported Mitt Romney, Nikki Haley, John McCain, they always pick the loser. Now in the end, when you get down to two, okay, maybe they pick the right one, but that's easy. So I just kind of shake my head. But the people you're mentioning, Brian, you're right about the latest news. These are all this is the Nikki Haley team. So you were wrong last time, probably wrong again. China is not ready to invade Taiwan. Let's just look at the Chinese perspective.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.